morning there. I hope you're doing well. Got your day started, TGIF and all that there. Almost the end of the week, end of the week coming up there, so that's the good news there. Almost time to go home and spend your weekend doing the honeydews and what have you there. So this morning I wanted to wrap up my comments on the Breonna Taylor situation there going on there in Louisville, Kentucky. And I just want to kind of do, I've been doing a little bit more research and what have you since last night, and I want to kind of talk about what I discovered here, and then talk about what my feedback there would be for what's going on as far as the charges brought or not brought there against the police people there in the Louisville here. So what I found out was trying to retrace the steps here back to where all this started. So apparently on Thursday, March the 12th there, I also didn't realize this was a Friday the 13th when all this went down. Man, you want to talk about like weird cosmic stuff going on there. This has definitely had some cosmic stuff, what have you. So on late evening of Thursday, March the 12th there, Judge Mary Shaw issued 5 search warrants, and they were no-knock warrants here. So they were not knock warrants. You didn't have to notify them. They were no-knock warrants here. So here's what you need to understand about no-knock warrants that I didn't understand. So a no-knock warrant means that they think that the people that they're going to do searching for have the tendency to run or to be violent. So by doing the no-knock, they have a choice to believe that they just go in and it prevents them from running or from trying to grab a weapon to engage in a battle there. So that's why it was a no-knock warrant situation, although it didn't make no sense for Breonna, but we'll talk about that in a second here. So the 5 no-knock warrants, 3 of them were for Elliott Street. 1 of them was for Muhammad Ali Street, I guess, and 1 of them was for Plainview Road, which is where Miss Breonna lived there. So they get these late in the evening there on Thursday the 12th there. And then the CID, which is the Criminal Investigation Division, they start suiting up other officers to help them, but not in, like, police uniform. They put them in plain clothes, all right? They didn't want them wearing the police costumes here, if you want to call it that. Costumes is not right. Uniform. So they bring in some other officers to the system because they're going to basically be doing raids on these different locations here. And Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, who was the one who got shot, along with, from what I can tell, Brett Hankinson and Miles Cosgrove, who were the 3 key people involved in this particular situation, are the ones that were all brought from other units, from what I can tell there. Not guaranteeing it, but I know Sergeant John Mattingly was brought from another unit. He said he knew nothing about the case. He was just brought in to assist in this raid there. So what happens is that Sergeant Mattingly goes by Breonna's apartment complex to kind of get an idea of what it's like over there at around 11:45 on the evening of the 12th, all right? And he says he kind of gets an idea of what it's like, and they can tell by looking at her apartment that it looks like the only light is coming from the TV inside of the bedroom there. And they can tell she has a front door, and then she has some patio doors on the side of her living room and what have you. So they leave, and they say they come back about 12:35. Now, they also said they thought she was alone. So they didn't think anybody was there with her. So who they're looking for, especially while Breonna was on the search warrant, who they were especially looking for is someone named DeMarcus Glover, who is her ex-boyfriend here, all right? Not a current boyfriend, which is Mr. Kenneth Walker there, the man who was arrested, in my opinion, wrongfully for self-defense, but he was originally arrested for, attempted murder of a police officer and assault of a police officer, which was eventually dropped. The charges were dropped against him because, of course, they had no case there. But, so they're looking for this DeMarcus Glover, who is her ex-boyfriend, but she is a person of interest there. So they come back at 12:30 or so is what Sergeant Mattingly says. And he, along with Brett Hankerson and another officer, they go around to the front door there of her apartment, which is kind of like not facing the street, but it's kind of facing the other way from the building. And then on the side where near the parking lot there's like some patio doors that lead out from her living room area there, from what I'm understanding in the description there. So Sergeant Mattingly, along with this Brett Hankerson and another officer, go around to the front door. And what they've decided to do apparently is, because they called Miss Breonna a soft target, which meant that she did not look like the kind of person, based on what they knew about her, that she was a dangerous person. So they decided, even though it was a no-knock warrant, that they was going to knock there. Okay, so a soft target basically is just what I told you. But it's obvious she was a soft target because this lady, like I said, was one of them earth angels, in my opinion. She was a healer, she was an EMT, and she was going to be a nurse there in hospitals there. So this was a lady who helped people. She wasn't someone who was a hurtful person there. The whole idea was is that they have had this reports there that DeMarcus Glover has picked up packages from her apartments before, all right? And they've said that she... because that there have been packages that have been delivered to her apartment under DeMarcus Glover's name, that they suspect she was helping him to basically get delivery of drugs and then hold on to some of his money. That was the whole thing they thought about her place, which is why they got that no-knock warrant there. Now, the thing you should know, or at least my opinion here, I want to kind of talk about it, is they also said that a postal worker had told the police there that packages for DeMarcus Glover had been delivered to this lady's apartment. Now, I have a problem with this because that suggests that the postal workers are telling stuff about people's apartments that ain't none of their business. The police department, the postal office is federal. And I don't know why they're telling people, well, DeMarcus was having packages delivered to her apartment for what have you. That's kind of weird to me that the post office is going off and talking. It's like they're informing people and they're violating people's privacy by telling people that. Now, the other thing here I want people to keep in mind is they've never said they saw Miss Breonna giving DeMarcus Glover a package. So there's something that I'm a little kind of curious about here, which is, it's entirely possible. I'm not saying it did happen, but there's enough lack of evidence that Miss Breonna was involved with drugs or illegal situations to believe that she had no involvement with drugs and probably didn't know those were coming to her apartment under any circumstances. Don't know that for sure, but I'm saying based on her lack of a record and what she did, that she wasn't involved in that necessarily. And people should understand that I don't know what it's like over there in Kentucky, but I know here in New York, and There are lots of times the mail people leave packages on your doorstep there, and you don't even know that they're left there until you get home and what have you, unless you got some kind of a service thing and whatever to let you know about it. So I'm not saying that she didn't know. What I'm saying is it's entirely possible that DeMarcus Glover could have been having packages delivered to Miss Breonna's apartment and knowing when they was coming based on tracking or what have you. And he could have gone to get them before she ever even knew they was there. So she may have never known any of this was going on. This could have been a complete mystery to her and what have you. Now, she may have still been in contact with him, but if she's like a nurse person, an EMT, what have you, she could also be one of those people who thinks she can save people. You know the kind of people. I know the women like that here. My daughter's one of those type of people and what have you. And I guess my wife could be called one of them people there. But I'm just saying that you got those people there who try to rescue people, right? They try to, be good to other people, thinking they can help them. And you can't change people unless they want to change, right? Hang on there. So basically, Miss Breonna may have not even known that these drugs were being delivered to her apartment. If they was even drugs, they don't actually know they were drugs. They're suspecting it because of a package. A package could be anything, right? Could be a pair of shoes for all we know. You know what I'm saying? We just don't know. And they said that the package, the last time they had seen a package delivered to her place there was in January, which is like 2 months before this thing even happened for all we know. So why are you doing something in March for something that you saw happen in January last that you're aware of or that we're aware of? This is where stuff from the grand jury is stuff we don't know that they may know. But irregardless, that's not necessarily related to the shooting. It's more related to what led up to the shooting, and that's a whole other conversation here. I want to focus on the shooting itself and the murder. It is still a murder. It can be an accidental murder if you want to call it that. I call it an irresponsible murder. But anyway, so they determined that Miss Breonna is supposed to be alone there at 11:45 when they go by a place here. Then they come back about 12:30. Now, Sergeant Mattingly says he notices that there's a car, a Tacoma, which I think is like an SUV. I don't know a lot about cars there, but I think it's like an SUV type of car there that is at the apartment complex that wasn't there before. And he even says he pulls his car up behind it. It's this white Tacoma. Now, this may have been Kenneth Walker's car. Now, I don't know that for sure, but this could have been his car, which is why they thought she was alone before. I haven't heard it or found out if that Tacoma belonged to Mr. Walker or what have you. It's entirely possible, though. That was his car. So, he and Sergeant Mattingly and Hankerson, Brett Hankerson and another cop, go in front of a door while Miles Cosgrove and a number of other cops, I know I've heard someone saying, some guy named Jake and somebody else there, they went around to decide where the patio doors was, which would be to prevent anybody from running out or what have you. So what happens is that they're getting ready they apparently knocked twice but did not identify themselves. Sergeant Mattingly is the one who's knocking on the door. But he said he did not identify who he was, just knocking on the door in 2 different occasions here. At one point, a neighbor comes from upstairs and is like, "What are you doing there?" and engages in a heated conversation here with, or exchange, not a conversation, but a heated exchange here, verbally, with Brett Hankerson. And Apparently the neighbor from upstairs said, "You leave that girl alone, she's a good girl." And Hankinson said something to the effect of, "Go back upstairs, search warrant, go back to your apartment." And he was apparently getting agitated enough that Sergeant Mattingly turned to him and said, "Calm down." Even though he's still doing something else, he could tell this guy is getting agitated over here. Meanwhile, Mattingly is still kind of knocking on the door and rapping on the door. He says after the first 2 times of rapping and nobody answers, he raps 4 more times, and in those 4 times, he's identifying himself as the police. Search warrants, what he said. So, after the 6th time, they've decided nobody's coming to the door. So they decide to batter ram the door there. So they get a batter ram, and he said they struck it 3 times here. The first time it did nothing. The second time it dented in the door to the point where the deadbolt, he said, was kind of at an angle, so he knew it was going to go. And the third time, the door opened up to the left there against the wall. And he went into a dark apartment. And he said he did not have the light on his gun on. So he goes into the apartment. Apparently the way it's laid out is to the right there inside is where the living room is. And the patio doors is in the living room there. So he goes past the living room there, and he comes to like a hallway there, and that's where he sees 2 people standing in the dark. He can't see their faces, he says. All he can tell is one's a woman and one's a man from what he can tell, and the man is stretched out in like a shooting position like you would be at a firing range, which leads me to believe that Mr. Walker took the effort to go to a firing range to learn how to shoot a gun for his own protection there. Because normally, if you're not like an experienced person knowing how to use a gun, your natural reaction's not gonna be, it's just like the normal kind of silly reaction people don't understand about how to position yourself with a gun there, and they just kind of do it one-handedly. If you're doing it with 2 hands, which is what he was suggesting that Mr. Walker was doing, it suggests Mr. Walker had gotten some kind of at least minimal training there to protect himself, because when you shoot off a gun, you get recoil there, and recoil kind of pushes you back. So by using both your hands, it helps you to stabilize from not having a severe recoil to your body from the gunfire in there. So he says he sees the gun, and then he hears the shot go off, and then his leg starts burning. I don't know if it was his right or his left leg. I've never been able to quite figure that out there. This is Sergeant Mattingly who gets shot there, and he says that he felt it burning immediately on his leg, and after that shot, he just opened fire and let out 4 bullets, boom, 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 right there in that direction there. And then he kind of falls back and towards the door area where he came in and gets off 2 more before hitting the ground and scooting himself back out and saying, "Some moron shot me there." So the cops pull him back out, but apparently as they pull him back out, they start opening fire. Brett Hankinson starts shooting, and he's the guy who ended up shooting into the other apartment. So apparently he let off shots, but he wasn't letting them off straight. So he was shooting into the apartment next door to Miss Breonna Taylor's place there, where there was 3 other people, which is why he got charged with unwarranted endangerment there of 3 different people who was residing in the apartment next door there. So he's shooting off, and at the same time he starts firing off, Miles Cosgrove and the other cops on the other side of the building near the patio doors, they start firing off rounds there and shooting into the apartment, while the other cop is helping Sergeant Mattingly get around, and they're helping him to try and get on a car so they can get him to an EMT because he's bleeding pretty bad because apparently his femoral artery was hit by the bullet in the thigh when Mr. Walker shot him above the knee there. So they're trying to take care of him, so they let off some shots into the apartment from both sides. Hankerson in Cosgrove, and the others, then they kind of quiet down and kind of get a distance from the apartment there, and they're focusing on taking care of Mattingly. Finally, the ambulance there comes to take care of Mattingly after a little bit of, I guess, a little bit of confusion about where they was and what have you. So they get a hold of Mattingly and start taking care of him. And they wait for over an hour at least from the sounds of it. So what happens is, at about 12:42 apparently, 3 different residents at that apartment complex, they call the cops and they say, hey, there's been shots fired over here. And then sometime between 12:42 and 12:49 or 48 or something like that, Kenneth Walker calls his mother and he says something to her, and then he ends up calling the police, and there's a 911 call you can look for online there. I don't know whether you guys placed the link there to the 911 call. You can look for it online, try and put it in there in the show thing if you can so they can hear it there. But so apparently what happens is that Mr. Walker there actually calls the police and says, please help. There's someone that shot my girlfriend, and he has apparently no idea who shot his girlfriend at all, because these guys went in plain clothes, like I said. Mattingly describes what he was wearing when he went into that apartment. Remember, he was the first one in and really the only one who got in. And he describes what he was wearing there, and from what he said, he was wearing like some black Under Armour boots there, and gray pants and like a pullover Nike hoodie there. And he was wearing a vest, he said, that did say police on it. I have no idea how big it was or how easy it was to read, but it may have been inconsequential there, because when he comes in that door, he bursts through it. And from what we can tell so far, according to Kenneth Walker, they had no idea who it was. Now, why they didn't hear them say police or whatever is kind of a mix of things. We don't know if it's because there was a ruckus going on outside near that apartment where that neighbor was yelling at them to leave her alone, and Hankerson is arguing with that person. We don't know if it's because the TV was too loud inside of that apartment there. We don't know if it's because Miss Breonna and Mr. Walker had been sleeping and woke up in darkness hearing this noise coming. They didn't know what the heck was going on there, and they just got out of bed and went towards to see what was going on, and Mr. Walker grabbed his gun there. But we don't know. So there's a whole lot of things we don't know about this here. So, he called Mr. Walker sometime around 12:49, 12:50 in that neighborhood there. He calls the police and says, my girlfriend's been shot, please help. And he says she's been shot. He doesn't know how many times. He doesn't know where she's been shot. He just knows people broke in and they shot my girlfriend there. And they don't, in the 911 call I heard, the person kept asking questions that made no sense to me, like, is she responsive, which makes sense, but he said, no, she's not responding. And they said, well, where did she get shot? And he goes, I can't tell. And at one point, the operator goes, can you turn her over? And all I'm thinking is, why would you move a person who's been shot and you have no idea where they got shot? If you turned over a person who'd been shot and that bullet shifted, it could kill them instantly, even if they were still alive for all you know. You know, that don't make no sense to me that you would even want them to be turned over there. If you know there's been a shooting, send an ambulance and what have you. But they don't send an ambulance immediately. Apparently it's over an hour, at least, from what I could tell. And there's more and more cops flooding around the apartment there. They said 120 cops or something at one point, which I don't think that's probably realistic. It doesn't make a lot of sense because I don't know how big Louisville, Kentucky is, for example, there. But I can't imagine you take 120 cops and pack them around one building. I mean, you want to talk about being a little bit ridiculous here. That would be more than a little ridiculous here to have that many cops piled around this apartment there at, 1:30 in the morning. Anyway, by the time they get into that hour after this is all started, they're telling Ken Walker he finally figures out it's the police outside there. And they tell him come out of the apartment. So apparently he comes out of the apartment and he don't even have the gun with him when he comes out. He's got his phone, which means he was on the phone talking to people and telling them what was going on. I think he even called Miss Breonna's mother, from what I can understand there. So they tell him to come out, and he comes out, and they're ordering him what to do. There's a video of it online where you can see one of the neighbors filmed him, and they show him backing out, and he's like doing everything the police is telling him to do. They're just like, turn around, drop the phone, get on the ground, all kinds of stuff. And he's doing what they're saying. It's not like this guy's resisting at all. Then they arrest him. And within a couple of hours, I think they charge him with attempted murder of a police officer and assault of a police officer there. So later on, what you should know is they charged him there, but they eventually dropped the charges against Mr. Walker because the things that are important to know is, number one, he wasn't involved in any of this situation prior to them coming to that apartment. This guy had nothing to do with him. This guy was about to stop job at a postal office here. He was going to be a post office worker. He was a legal, licensed gun owner. This guy did not have a criminal record from what I can ever find here. This was just a normal, average citizen here trying to get by and trying to have a relationship with a girl. And he gets caught up in this mess here. And it truly is a mess. It's like a ridiculous mess here that these people got into this whole thing. It's a tragic mess here. But I think it could have been avoided. And I'll talk about that in a minute or so here. But anyway, so what it turns out is that when Mr. Walker and Breonna got up after hearing this noise coming from the front of their apartment, Mr. Walker, Kenneth there, he grabs his gun. And I don't know if Miss Breonna did it by request there or if she did it out of fear. But she stays close to Mr. Walker when they get in that hallway. And Kenneth takes his position there to protect himself and Miss Breonna. And as soon as he sees a figure after that door blasts open there, and he sees a figure, he shoots, but he apparently, and I think what he says is true. Mattingly says he was in a stretched out position, like he was learning to shoot at a gun range. And that suggests he probably did go to a gun range. And Mr. Walker says he shot towards the floor. Now, he may not have been a great shot there, but he said he was shooting towards the floor, which means either the guy got to him before he let off the round, and because of the way he was aiming, and it was higher than that. But he said he was never trying to shoot anybody. He was trying to warn them, whoever it was, to get away. But he ends up shooting him, the Sergeant Mattingly guy there. And Sergeant Mattingly let off 4 shots. So my expectation here, or my assumption here, is that what happened is that when Sergeant Mattingly shot off those 4 rounds, some of them must have hit Miss Breonna because she was right next to Mr. Walker. And then he falls back, hits the door, lets off 2 more shots. I don't know if any of those hit him or not. My suspicion is it probably not those hit. My suspicion is it was those first 4 shots there. 1 or 2 or 3 or all of them, for all I know. But they were the ones that hit Miss Breonna. I don't think it was the last 2. I could be wrong, but I'm making an assumption here. Because he was aiming in that direction when he first got shot, and by the time he got to the door and was hurting and shot out 2 more, I don't think he was focused probably as much as he could have been there. So then he gets dragged out, and Hankerson apparently never went into the apartment. He's shooting from outside the apartment into the doorway, apparently. So and his bullets never touched Miss Breonna, so my assumption is what he's doing. He's shooting, and he's not shooting like straight, and he's shooting and it goes off at an angle inside of the apartment, but hits the other apartment too from the inside. And I also thought there was a dozen shots that were put off, but apparently it was like 35 or 40 shots that went off that night there, including Sergeant Mattingly's. So while Hankerson is shooting there, out there by the patio doors on the other side, Miles Cosgrove, and some other cops, 1 or 2, whatever, are also shooting inside the apartment. And apparently 1 or 2 or whatever, Cosgrove also hit Miss Breonna. I'm guessing this is from ballistic reports. They can tell which gun the bullets came from. But the bullets that hit Miss Breonna were from Sergeant Mattingly and Miles Cosgrove there. They do not say which one, at least from what I can tell, which one of those bullets was the fatal one. But she got shot 6 times, and they said it was one of the 6 that was actually fatal. So they stop after they fired off a little and back off, take care of Sergeant Mattingly, who shot. They wait over an hour. So most likely, at least I hope for her sake, God rest her soul, I hope that Miss Breonna did not lay there suffering for an hour before she passed away. That would be truly tragic, because she was a young, innocent woman and had no reason to be hurt there. But, so they wait over an hour, and I'm sure by the time that happened, she was gone. Now, Ken may have been hoping, Mr. Walker there may have been hoping she wasn't gone. But, most likely, if she'd been waiting there for an hour, she was probably already gone because of her wounds there. God rest your soul there, Miss Breonna. So, they arrest Mr. Walker when he follows their instructions and comes outside. They arrest him. I told you about the charges they gave him originally. They gave him attempted murder of a police officer and assault of a police officer, but ultimately they were dropped because they determined he acted in self-defense, and he was a licensed gun owner. Now, the things here that are getting on my nerves about this whole thing there, we'll get to the grand jury indictment decisions, because I'm getting a different perspective on it, but I still think there's problems here that need to be addressed. The problem I'm having here is this whole thing was completely avoidable. There was no reason, based on what they knew, which was very limited, to believe that they had to act after midnight. When there's other people around, when there's total darkness, when there's a greater chance of confusion happening in the dark, the cop's not using his gun as he walks through that door. Sergeant Mattingly, I'm referring to there. They were asking for more problems than they needed. Now, I understand that Sergeant Mattingly did not know anything about the case, and whoever else was not originally on this case, them going out there, they didn't know anything other than what they was told. But I'm telling you, whoever was in charge of that CID And that particular raid, that was completely unnecessary the way they did that there. Totally unnecessary. They put everybody in that building's life in danger there. Because it was late at night, they had no absolute complete knowledge of who was in that building at the time. They said they thought Miss Breonna was alone, and she wasn't. Now, maybe if Kenneth Walker wasn't there, they would have arrested her and done all that. But they had no idea who was in that building there, in that apartment specifically there. And they shouldn't have reacted without knowing that for sure. If they had known that Mr. Walker was in there, they could have known this guy owns a firearm because he was a licensed gun carrier. They could have said, look, we got a problem. There's a guy in there who actually carries. We need to make sure that we're not going to have a confrontation in the middle of the night there with somebody. That's good thinking there, you know? That's smart brain thinking there, but they didn't do that. They had no idea who was in there. They were going to go in there. And I don't understand for the life of me there. How could you have not waited until the next morning when the sun was out? People were going to work. This is before this whole pandemic thing there took off. This was Friday the 13th. This was before a shutdown by the federal government, by the Trump thing there. This is before any of that finally happened. People were still going to work. Why didn't you wait till those people were going to work there? Or wait till this woman came out of her apartment there at whatever time it was, or even waited until 9 o'clock in the morning to knock when she was more likely to be awake and say, look, we got a search warrant. We're looking for stuff here that we suspect. Here's the warrant. We have a right to search. Or wait until she is not there and go search. I mean, there's any number of options you could have pursued at this point to address this situation that did not require you to go in the middle of the night. There was nothing urgent. It wasn't like there was a drug deal in action at that time. You thought she was alone. So were you planning to go at 12:30 in the morning because you thought you could intimidate a young 26-year-old woman at that time of night and you thought it would be easy for you to get away with that stuff when it's dark and she's scared? That's pretty crappy if you ask me. If you did that to my daughter, you'll be lucky if there's one bullet in you. That's ridiculous there. You're putting someone in danger for no reason, and if you really thought it was because you thought that girl was alone, you planned to intimidate her and scare her for no reason. And you know what's even worse about all this? Not that this isn't already as horrible as it can be. They found no drugs there. There were no drugs in that girl's apartment. There was no money. There was no drugs. And the guy who they was trying to get, they got him over there on Elliott Street at one of the addresses there. They got that Glover guy there. There was something really wrong with the way that CID division works there. They could have done that during the day, presented her with the search warrant, or waited till she was gone, or whatever else. This girl did not have a gun, and you wouldn't have had the problems there. There's something very wrong with the way this thing went down there. Now, let's talk about the aftermath with the jury, the grand jury there. The Hankinson guy got what he deserved. He was fired for his poor conduct. He was fired because he was putting other people in danger. Not that the whole concept wasn't in danger, but putting people in danger by going in there that late at night. But he was putting people even more so in danger by shooting from the outside of the apartment there and shooting into walls sideways. That's idiotic there. That guy not only should have not been a police officer in the first place if he can't handle that kind of stuff, but he shouldn't have been anywhere near that situation if he didn't know how to handle himself with a neighbor who was annoyed by what they was doing. He had poor skills, it sounds like, period. When Hankerson was terminated from his job, good. And then he was charged for unwarranted endangerment of those 3 people over there in that other apartment that he shot into. As far as Sergeant Mattingly is concerned, I don't know. Part of me's really annoyed with him for going in there and not turning on his gun light, because that could have helped. Part of me's mad at him because he didn't know for sure if she was there alone. And then there's another part of me that goes, this guy was following orders. He was doing the job he was assigned to, and his job is not to question orders if they believe this needs to happen then and now, and he's being directed by his supervisors. He's just doing his job. So it's hard for me to blame him to a degree for what he did, because he was just protecting himself when he thought he was being shot upon. And for all he knew, he could have been DeMarcus Glover shooting at him because they knew there was a target that was risky. That's why they had the no-knock warrant. Right? DeMarcus Glover, that's the whole reason they had the no-knock, is because they thought he was dangerous and must have been known for either fleeing or fighting. And they wanted to surprise him there. Kenneth Walker had nothing to do with this. Remember that. Kenneth Walker and Miss Breonna, but especially Kenneth Walker was completely unconnected to DeMarcus Glover as far as any of this is concerned. This is an innocent young guy. Miss Breonna was an innocent young woman who happened to choose the wrong person to try and save, or fell for a bad boy, like unfortunately a lot of girls do there. But it's hard for me to completely condemn Sergeant Mattingly. I think if it was me, I would be pushing for a demotion of some kind probably there. Just simply because he didn't follow procedure of putting a gun light on. I don't know that would have made a huge difference if you're talking about him going into a room and doing, busting through a door. I don't know if Kenneth Walker was paying attention to anything more than the ringing in his ears of a door being smashed in and his fear of being killed and his girl being killed. I don't know what difference a gun light would have made, but if it was procedure to use it, and he didn't, I think he should be demoted. Miles Cosgrove and the other people on the outside of that building, I can't really blame them. They had no idea what was going on. They weren't in the apartment. They heard officer down. They heard shots coming from Hankerson, and they opened fire because they thought they were in a firestorm situation there. So I honestly can't blame Cosgrove and the other cops on the other side, although it sounds like Cosgrove was the one who was shooting in there. Unfortunately, Cosgrove has no idea what's going on. He hears that Mattingly's been shot. He hears shots going off into the apartment in that area, and he has no idea who it's coming from. So he opens fire because he's trying to protect or resolve the situation there. So apparently right after Mattingly got shot, Kenneth Walker and Miss Breonna hit the floor. And I don't know if she tried to get back up. and got shot by Cosgrove. I'm not entirely sure how that all played out. But Mr. Walker put off one shot. One. And then the bullets started flying 35 to 40 from the police there. But it's hard for me to blame Cosgrove there. Honestly, I think he was just doing his job at that point because he thought there was a threat and he was trying to attempt to resolve it there. I think someone who does need to be charged with something, and I don't want to know if you would call it involuntary manslaughter, reckless endangerment, whatever. But whoever oversaw that raid, whoever was in charge of that raid, based on who the person was and all that, they should have been charged with something or lost their job at the very least. But I think they should have been charged because they created a dangerous situation without reasonable cause in the long term, in my opinion there. I really do. I understand where the Attorney General, Mr. Cameron there, is coming from when he talks about what the grand jury heard. But understand, he's defending the situation about what happened in the moment at that apartment. I'm talking about what led up to that. I'm talking about what led up to that occasion and why it didn't have to occur. Miss Breonna Taylor, God rest her soul, would still be here if that had been handled better. As far as it being a black thing or a white thing, or a Hispanic thing or what have you, I'm not sure if it was a black, white, Hispanic thing. I think what we could look at is the worst part of all of it, in my opinion, is that it was people who thought they could intimidate a young girl because of the hour and the darkness and her not knowing what's going on. And I think that's disturbing that could happen there. But I think that's what they were doing, trying to intimidate a young girl because they thought late at night, a bunch of cops, 7 or 8 cops or what have you, 6, 7 cops there, coming into your apartment, battering down your door if you don't answer it. They figure she's going to be scared. And they said they thought she was alone. So that really kind of puts my final thoughts on this thing into perspective. I don't think the right people, other than Hankerson, were actually charged. I think whoever supervised that CID unit and supervised that raid in particular there, I think they need to be charged with reckless endangerment of the public or something like that. I'm not sure. Unwarranted endangerment like they charged Hankerson with, an involuntary manslaughter for Miss Breonna Taylor's death. I don't think they meant to kill her, but I think their actions led to her murder. And it's still a murder. You can charge her with manslaughter and it's still a murder. Because she was murdered in a home and there was no real evidence that was more than circumstantial to connect her to that situation with drugs and what have you. So I hope this gives you a better picture into what was going on there. And I pray so much for the family of Miss Taylor. And I pray for Mr. Walker. I know Miss Taylor's family, Miss Breonna's family, that they got a judgment there, a plea bargain of $12 million or what have you dollars there from the situation. But like I said in one of my other talks there, I think they would have rather had Miss Breonna back. And I know I wish she was still around. She was a good person from what I could tell. And she would have probably helped a lot of other people in her life there. There is liability there in Louisville, whatever you have you. I just don't think the right people was completely charged there. And there needs to be some terminations, and there needs to be some involuntary manslaughter minimally there for what happened there. I understand where Attorney General Cameron's coming from. I don't blame him for doing that. He's got to deal with the moment. I'm talking about what happened before. The supervisors there, they got rid of that no-knock warrant nonsense, and that's exactly what you should do. I just don't like what they did to this young girl. And I'm getting tired of some of this media going, it was an accident. Yes, it was an accident. I'm not disagreeing with you there that it was an accident, but what I am telling you why I'm calling it a murder is because it was unnecessary. It was an accident as the result of behavior that didn't need to happen. Unnecessary because she was not a dangerous threat that couldn't have been waited for 8 more hours before you went to her apartment. You could have waited 8 more hours, and this girl would still be alive. Anyway, I know I went a little long there, but I hope I didn't cut off your lunch break, your morning break, what have you. And I hope you have a good rest of the day. I just wanted to give you some more knowledge here of what was going on based on my little research, because I know you're busy, and maybe I had a little more time to look it up than you did. But just think about that, chat with your pals about it, have a conversation, what have you. See what you think, and feel free to leave your opinions here in the show description or what have you, or call the hotline there at 505-585-0500. And I appreciate you listening very much, and God bless you.